it must stop. The blue code of silence has to be uprooted. And wrong can't be right. And we got to fight for right. A lot of us up here, we got family members that are part of the Memphis Police Department, Sheriff Department, and other departments in this county. And we know there are good police. But we got to root out the bad, and we got to fight for what's right. Because if we didn't have cameras, we wouldn't be talking today. Tyre Nichols would have resisted arrest, like they said in the first report, and that would be it. But we had cameras, and we had the sky cop to capture it all. We must have the Justice Department to come in and do a forensic pattern and practice investigation.
This effort that resulted from the tragic death, the torture and killing, murder of young Tyre Nichols, the way that it's been handled, the level of sophistication where the community has responded with nonviolent protests was not by chance. It's because it was organized. It was organized. I'm going to ask Ms. Amber Sherman to speak to you as one of the prime organizers, one of the young folk who have been able to demonstrate their displeasure with the system, civil disobedience without violence.
My name is Amber Sherman. I signed on to the letter as the president of the Shelby County Young Democrats. And as Young Dems, we definitely believe that there is a need for an investigation here because there is a clear pattern and practice that the police department have been abusing their power as officers and discriminating, traumatizing, and essentially murdering individuals. I also think it's important that we as young people and as citizens of Memphis do make our voices heard when incidents like this happen. And so we have been organizing and making sure that we have concrete policies that follow this incident that happened to Tyre, and just as we heard today earlier, Gershon Freeman, because we know there is a clear system issue within the Sheriff's Department and the Memphis Police Department, and the leaders who are in charge currently are not taking it seriously. And I think that it's very easy to bring up, issues of violence or moments of violence that could happen, but I don't believe in fear-mongering, folks. I think it's important that everyone understands that we all have a right to make our voices heard in whatever capacity possible, and that can look like a multitude of different things versus protesting in the streets, showing up at city council meetings, making public comments at county commission meetings, showing up outside someone's house on a sidewalk like the previous DA on the 4th of July when she refused to let people out of jail because they were dying of COVID. I mean, it can look like very many different things, and they don't have to end in violence. But I do think that everyone has a right to do that in whatever capacity they see possible. And I have chosen to make sure that my name and other folks who are leading are able to keep that going.
I want y'all to take special note now. The same way that it happened back in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s is the way it's going now. Our young people are in the streets. Our young people are leading the nonviolent protests, the civil disobedience. Our young people are organized. I'm going to ask another one of our young people, Benny Smith, who is also one of our appointed Shelby County election commissioners, to have a couple of words.
Thank you, GA. I stand here as an appointed representative of Shelby County, but also a citizen of Memphis, and I'm also in a group of young black men who know this code very well. Growing up in North Memphis, in one of the poorest zip codes here, we named them as friendlies. A friendly is an officer who will come and take your money and beat you but won't take you to jail. They were officers who were behind the badge, and they would do great harm to us, and we were just happy to go back home. So I've been involved in the community, and I would say that this is, after a tragedy like this, it's a good necessary first step. I wouldn't look at it as an emergency as much as a chance to reset and look at what's going on. You want someone like the federal government to come. They're an independent organization. They're void of political pressure. There's no reason for them not to just come and lay it out. Analysis is understanding how the parts relate to the whole. And if they do an analysis and they just see the pattern that will come up. There's data. There's public data, but then there's data that you don't want necessarily the public to have, that someone like the Department of Justice can look at. If there were instances leading up to this, then we should look for every single pattern that matches that. We do this all the time in social media. We do it in elections. We do it everywhere. We need the Department of Justice to come and do it with the police department. There are a lot of seats that may just be waiting for good officers to go inside of it. So if there's a pattern and a practice of this, it's called the blue wall of silence. We all know what it's called. When I saw it, I thought about Rodney King. You see these officers on camera doing some deplorable behavior, and you have an outcry of people saying, wow, I don't believe my lying eyes. And I immediately thought, like, that's what we saw back in the 90s when it was happening to Rodney King. But those officers all pled not guilty. So that rubs a little raw as a community citizen. And I applaud the leaders. We need our leadership now. I'm speaking as a citizen, we need our leaders. Van Turner, didn't you put the bill that made the Sky Cop? Like there was the Sky Cop cam is what caught everything. Police are convenient. They know how to get the camera to fall off just at the right time. But the Sky Cop, it didn't fall off. It didn't fall off. So there was enough that was there to give us a complete picture of what happened. And we just got cameras in Memphis, but that practice has been here for a while. So I'm in full support, especially with the legislators. I'm appointed by the legislators. These are my two bosses. So I'm appointed by the legislators. So they are doing things in the legislature. We are the consent of the government. We are supposed to have our elected representatives go to their respective offices and represent us. And they are looking to put forth legislation to make a difference. And I wouldn't look at it. Again, I wouldn't look at it as anything more than someone needs to come and take a look at what our patterns and practices are. We should all welcome someone come. If I haven't done anything wrong, it's free advertising. But if the pattern is wrong, then we need to correct the pattern. Thank you.
Well, you went back to actually Rodney King. All right, but this stuff goes back beyond that. It goes back to Elton Hayes, Shannon Street. Okay, and on and on and on and on and on. And no one in those cases were ever convicted of doing anything. Okay, so it's been a pattern for a long time of murder in the black community, especially African-American men. So that impartial group that we talked about, the Fed, as Chairman has said, always have given us some type of real look and redress. So we need them to come in a hurry, look at it, analyze it, so that people can still maintain confidence of what it is that's going on in our police department. But it's a pattern. When I was a kid, they did the same thing to us, and but they didn't murder us like they murdered today. People are actually being murdered on live TV. That's what's happening today. And so we need them to come in. We're asking that they come in and deal with it in short order so we can get to the root of it and solve it. And it's happening all over the country. It's happening all over the country. So that's who we need. Following the chairman's lead, hopefully that's what we'll have. And we have some additional information to give to the public where people are, settled down in terms of how they feel driving to the grocery store or driving home from, he was 80 yards from his mother's house. Can you imagine? You need calm. You need calm, and you need also the fact that you don't have to worry about your children coming home from wherever they're going. Okay, so.
If I may, I want to comment on a couple of the legislative initiatives that my colleague and I, with the help of counsel, Attorney Ingram, have been pulling together. One piece of legislation would actually get to an issue that we just have strayed away from way too long, And that's a matter of whether or not the individuals that we hire who are authorized to take our liberty or our lives, we give them that authorization. But are they emotionally fit? Are they psychologically sound? Do they have the type of mental capacity? Do they have the type of emotional stability to carry out the job? Being a law enforcement officer on the streets of Memphis and any other urban area is not easy. It's like being in combat every night. We take special care of veterans who go on active duty. They have the opportunity to come back and have a chance to recharge and relax and then go back out again. Our law enforcement officers are at this every day they go to work. Every day. And quite a few of them work overtime. Work overtime. Imagine the stress and the trauma in seeing what's out here on these streets these days, especially with the post-pandemic effect. Imagine what's going on in their minds and how disturbed their souls are. So we have a bill that will call for the mental and psychological evaluation to make sure that you are fit for the job and the job fits you. We will also ask that the General Assembly will put in place the requirement that there be annual assessments. We will also ask that there be assessments when there are promotions or when there are assignments to these special units that are going to have a larger degree of autonomy and a larger degree of power to take your liberty or your life. Now, we also have a bill that would allow for us to better monitor what's going on with the body cams, the dash cams, the sky cops. We believe that all of these sky cops need to be, number one, they need to be working. We don't need dummies up there giving a false sense of security. Number two is we have the opportunity now, because we have a revamping of our workforce, to figure out how to bring in reserve officers, how to bring in retired officers, how to bring in, are they still PSTs? And assign them the responsibilities and give them the experience to set and monitor real time these cameras that are surveilling the neighborhood. So those are two of the major items that we want the legislature to work on, and hopefully we'll be able to pass it. I want to ask that Van Turner would close us out.
Are there any questions?
Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question for our two legislators here.
Yes, ma'am.
The letter made it clear that you all believe this is an issue that starts at the top. I want to know, at this point, do you believe that Chief C.J. Davis can implement those changes you want to see within the department?
We're not going to render judgment on Police Chief C.J. Davis's capacity to do her job. What we are going to insist on is that truth, transparency, that those are two key words in order to get our trust in the department going forward, whether it's led by Chief Davis or not. But we also recognize that Chief Davis doesn't have the last call on this. The C-suite in City Hall is where the final decision is made. So we want to make sure that we don't see Chief Davis scapegoated. We do want her held accountable for whatever her judgments or lack of judgments may have played in this incident and other incidents that may come to light. However, we will not tolerate her being scapegoated.
Any other questions?
One of the more shocking aspects of this assault on Tyre Nichols was the lack of care and the refusal to render aid almost. It was almost a refusal by the paramedics that responded to the scene. Is this something that lawmakers are also wanting to look towards and see if there's any type of patterns or policies that are enabling, firefighters or EMTs to just put their duty aside? Is that a concern? Can anything be done about that?
Well, certainly something can be done about it, but it's unconscionable for you to be a part of the fire department EMT saving lives and not render care to someone that's dying or potentially maimed. Now, since this happened, we have what you call caption bills out there because the deadline came so close with us filing our bills, but we have caption bills that some of this may be able to fit in where it's automatically going to be a crime if you don't do that. Even the police officer is supposed to render help after they do whatever's happened to them. If there was a dog involved in that situation, the dog would have gotten help, okay? Human beings at all times should be helped, okay, regardless of whether the person is guilty or what have you, okay? You're still supposed to help them. And so we need to codify that for those layers to be included, that make sure that our citizens are helped even when they're acting out and doing bad things. We still want them to have their day in court, okay, and go through the due process. So we have caption bills we're looking at to see if we can fit that in. You have to be able to put it in a certain category code. Unfortunately, our time frame ran about 2 weeks ago where you have to have all this stuff introduced. And so if we can't do it this year with a caption bill, we have to look at it next year. But it has to be addressed though.
All right, we're
Oh,
going to
can I say something?
Council here.
Also, in our request that we have made, we have also asked the Department of Justice to look at all supporting agencies, to look at those policies and procedures, and to see if there are other issues and other entities that also need recommendations and policies that need to be changed. So that is included in our request.
And if I may, there are a couple of specific bills which are tackling that problem from a different angle. One of the problems that we have with this blue code is some of the law enforcement officers, the good ones, are fearful for their lives, for their well-being, for their families and those close to them. So we have a bill that we'll be offering that will allow law enforcement, the DA's office, the AG's office, whoever is needed to quickly make a decision on providing protection and relocation for whistleblowers who are in the first responders corps. These are folks who, at the time that the scene, the crime scene is made by not just the local law enforcement, but by the DA's representatives, by TBI, that they would have, the DA and TBI could make that call that now it's the time to provide the security and safety, the custody, place in custody, those individuals who may be first responders, may have knowledge, may have witnessed a failure to intervene or a failure to render aid. And they will be placed in custody, relocated, and hopefully that will ensure that we'll have witnesses who will help to make the cases that do go forward successful. So as my colleague said, we've got bills that will speak to failure to render aid and failure to intervene and put more clarity in statute and put more teeth into the law to increase those penalties. And we want to create some type of continuity between the rules that our first responders operate under, department rules, our local ordinances, our state statutes, and the federal law.
All right, we're going to do two last questions. You're going to go, then you're going to be it. Yes, ma'am.
How soon do you hope or expect to get a response from the DOJ, and how long do these investigations generally take?
Well, Representative Hardaway and Van have already spoken with representatives from the Department of Justice, so I believe that they are pretty ready to come in once the formal request has been made. And just like the juvenile court investigation, that took a long time. It took years. So it just really, it's hard to say.
Okay, you, and then we'll finish with you. Yes, ma'am.
My question is, we were blessed that the sky cams were working in that area. Well, are there sky cams working in all the areas? Because I know where I particularly say, I don't feel like the cameras work because it's crime going on, and we don't get that kind of response. So I just want to know, are the cameras being watched equally?
Personally, I would doubt that, but that means something that we need to look into. I think Representative Hardaway talked about that. They need to be working. Thank God they were there. But I doubt it that they're working. But with the police department having to manage those cameras, that means it's time for them to be checked. That's an excellent point. Throughout the city, and make sure they're powered, cleaned, and they're able to capture whatever visual that's necessary in order to save a citizen's life. So that's an excellent question. That's something we need to get to the police director in writing to look at those cameras, okay? And as well as the sheriff, okay? Excellent question. Thank you for that.
And as we do his last question, I just want to acknowledge Ms. Tequila Rucker. Tawana Murphy is here with us. Sanjeev Mamula.
Absolutely.
They're all standing with us. I don't think we've called their names out. Okay, ma'am, you get the last question.
Okay, just two parts. One, if you guys can give us the number for the bills that have been filed.
Okay, second part.
Yeah, let us do that.
Okay.
That's a little bit teeth, so we get all this to you.
And then I have a question about, there's a claim in the letter that says that you received information that MPD has found a way to hire officers that have previously failed mental health evaluations. Can you elaborate on where the information is coming from and how long this may have been going on?
The information came to me unsolicited. I cannot elaborate. I will share more details with the Department of Justice. But in essence, we're talking about the law enforcement agencies shopping around until they get what they want in terms of the mental evaluations, the psychological evaluations. That's wrong. So we're going to ask that the department will look at that. We don't know what we need to put in place. It may be as simple as promulgating rules for those who hold the license for doing those type of evaluations, or it may require us to actually look at more law, more statute.
Thank you.
Let me share this with you. I had a bill some time ago, couldn't get it passed, okay, because I saw some of this kind of activity happening. It was a bill that if we found out, or the department found out, that you had a former or a current officer in law enforcement had been involved in gangs or racist organizations or any of these illicit groups, that we could automatically terminate them without any redress from them. I couldn't pass the bill. Going to bring the bill back to try to get it, because in our departments we know that people have infiltrated, and they don't have the best interest of citizens at heart. And it's not just in our department. I'm talking about across the country. Right. Okay? And you get a lot of information, read a lot of information, but you've got to be able to get these people, get them out of the departments of law enforcement where they have the power of life and death. It's just unacceptable. But there again, I couldn't get it passed. Got law enforcement agents up there, people that have been involved in the department. They wouldn't go along with me, but we have to go back like we did the anti-slavery bill out of the Constitution. We have to go over and over and over again and try to get these people out of law enforcement. They don't need to be able to work in law enforcement anywhere at all. Not good. Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Okay. So we have additional letters that are forthcoming. Mr. Josh Spickler with Just City is assisting. So this is just the first wave of demands with this initial letter. There will be forthcoming more letters, more input. We have this wonderful representative of the Church and God in Christ here, but there are other Bishop Hall, but there are other churches and other denominations who would join. This is a community effort. because it's going to take the community to fix this issue. And we can't have police policing themselves. We look at the bill to undo CLERB and other organizations. We need to oppose that, and we need to fight for transparency and justice. Federal government has always been a friend to the NAACP and to African Americans in this community, from desegregating schools to protecting us when we were protesting, from coming in and ensuring that we had voting rights and civil rights. And so we call again on the federal government to do what it is in place to do to assist us in this community like it's done. There's been a consent order of the Memphis Police Department back in the 70s, if you research. There's been a consent order of our jails back in the 2000s, if you research. And just recently there's been a consent order that Cardell spoke about of our juvenile court system. So we've had consent orders and they have been effective, and that's why we're calling for a pattern and practice investigation, which will hopefully result in a consent order. We appreciate y'all, and we'll be in touch. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ben.
Yeah.
Good job.
It's 8 pages.
Thank you, Council. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got something for me?
That's the letter. One of the letters.